Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Iron Canon podcast, your home for in-depth discussion on the lore of the High Republic and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew. I'm coming to you from Underworld North Studio in Toronto. And as always, I'm joined from across the continent by your friend and mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. I'm doing well. For a second, I thought you were frozen, but no, you're
We're
moving
good.
around. So
We're good. We're good. There you go. Yes, my Wi-Fi is back. My internet is back. I'll sort it out. Joel, also good to see you. I know you're in Orange County, so you're removed from the fires, but our thoughts and prayers and hopes go with everyone down in Southern California. I did mean to post a bunch of links where folks can donate and chip in. I think I'll share that on the Iron Cannon socials, and then next week make sure it's in the notes. My apologies for that.
I put the link in the notes
Oh,
for you.
you put a link. Okay, good. Shows how much I'm paying. I was just so busy this week, so much I'm paying attention. Yeah. So yeah. If there's if you have the heart, I think it's to the animal rescue, right?
No, I put it to the community page. LA Fires one.
Okay, good. Good that there's something in there because yes, thoughts and prayers are fine from my persuasion, but never enough. Because the rebuilding and the everything, it's gonna have to go on there. Our hearts go to. It's going to be a lot of work, and hopefully, actually, maybe something to might come up in this episode because we're talking about we are all the Republic and
Or
or
are we?
the Republic shall be reorganized into the first Galactic Empire for a safe and secure society. But is the galaxy far, far away? And I'll let you do the impression, the Palpatine impression in a bit. But is the galaxy far, far away ever a single society? Are the folks there really all the Republic? Do divisions and competing interests override a sense of unity? Was the Empire simply building on what was already there, or was it ultimately a futile? Was it a what ultimately futile exercise in unitary state building? Can theories of pluralism and federalism help us see deeper complexities between these two options? We're getting political, we're getting personal, we're getting all of the above on this Iron Cannon deep dive. So strap right in. It's gonna be a good one. First off, let's get to some plugs out of the way. You can still follow us on Threads and Instagram, and of course also on Twitter at Iron Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. We have not bailed the Muskiverse or the Metaverse just yet, but you can also follow us at Iron Cannon. Be on Blue Sky at Iron Cannon as well. Yeah, we're definitely updating. Yeah, we're updating more. I think on Blue Sky it seems to be there. Also, if audio is more your speed, I know we're live right now on YouTube and Twitch, but if audio is more your speed, just after this episode wraps, I will pop pop it right up onto Spotify and Apple Podcasts for your listening pleasure, your re-listening pleasure, whatnot, however you choose to engage with us. Please do let us know. We value your feedback. If you're listening to this after the fact right now, please do let us know. We appreciate it. Also, we are proudly part of the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network. And so here on the Underworld YouTube channel, we have memberships. We got super chats. If you chat with us in the comments, we will, of course, get to them, acknowledge them, and respond to them. If you super chat us, you support the channel, bump you right to the top of the pile and get to it immediately. So, of course, we're grateful for any support you can provide. You're willing to provide us. Of course, we will say your dollars are better spent helping with fire relief and both the humans and the animals and even the property and whatnot. But if you also have some dollars to spare, please do feel free to send them our way as well. We will be most grateful. Lastly, Discord server, Star Wars Underworld Discord server. Well, not lastly, we got a few more plugs to get through, but lastly, for the Underworld world, the Discord server, just in the description below, there's a minty fresh link, as I like to say, that gets you into the server. As long as you're polite and kind and genuine and not a meanie. Of course, all genuine Star Wars opinions are welcome. All genuine Star Trek, Marvel, whatever it is we're talking about, opinions are welcome. But definitely we're fostering a positive community there. So check out the description there. Joel, any events coming up in the Discord?
Yes, this Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be watching a movie. We'll be watching Disney's Treasure Planet on Disney Plus.
There we go. It's a classic, Treasure Planet. Kind of, like I'm guessing that has to do with the Skeleton Crew a little bit.
Yes.
My guess there. Right on. In case you're wondering, yes, I am scoreboard watching a little bit. Got the Vikings and the Rams from Arizona. Checking that out. So, hence the hat. Anyway, for some reason I'm a Vikings fan. Don't ask me. I've never been to Minnesota, but why not? Lastly, so yeah, please do also check out the Discord events. They're fun. Last plug to get through Tractor Beam Comics reviews every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific here on the Underworld YouTube channel and on Twitch, Iron Canon Twitch, and Underworld Twitch. Chris Abbott and I talk about the comic books that came out that day in Star Wars, as well as if there's any insider short stories in Star Wars Insider the magazine. And I've happened to get my issue of Insider in. There was a strike, a mail strike here in Canada, so it's probably why it was so delayed. But we're talking about Battle of Jakku Last Stand number 3 and the insider short story The Fate of Ariadu. This is the penultimate issue of Battle of Jakku, and it's a good one. So please do join us for that right here on Underworld YouTube channel and Twitch and Iron Canon Twitch, Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and then of course as the same thing on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for Iron Canon. Search Iron Canon Podcast. Of course, Tractor Beam Comics reviews are there on the internet for your listening pleasure. But yeah, I think that does it for plugs. Joel, I'll you jump in here. How's your week in Star Wars?
My week of Star Wars is going well. I kind of have like one mini week of Star Wars, which is also a plug. So I'm going to plug this first because actually I'm going to plug something for once, and then I'll get to my actual thought of Star Wars for a hot second. On a website called HoloNet, I don't think it's the HoloNet that we did, different HoloNet. There is a hours-long documentary called "The Crafting an Epic: The Making of the New Jedi Order." The 2019 book series that ran from 1999 to 2005 about the Jedi versus the Yuzong Vong. Very informative, very epic. Lots of interviews from all those authors, from Stackpole to Lucino to some others, to some editors. Go watch it if you're a Legends fan, or not, if you just want to learn the history of Star Wars. Go for it. So that is my first little plug. That's actually not my weakest Star Wars, but I had to plug it.
Yeah, it looks cool. I've seen it on social media. How many episodes is it? Do you know?
I don't know how many episodes it's going to be, but I know this is part 1, and it's an hour, 17 minutes, and 41 seconds long.
Right.
So this is just episode 1. Right. I don't know how many it's going to be.
Is it video or is it audio or what is it?
It's audio with some visuals.
Okay.
So just want to listen to it. I think it'll be good.
Sure.
So that is my original. So that is my plug-in. As for my week of Star Wars, I had a thought this week, and I'm going to ask you a question. Matthew, should Palpatine be the only evil ruler of the Galactic Republic has ever had?
Highly unlikely.
Exactly. So
I knew we were going with this.
So I've been thinking about this for a while. I think you can make the argument. I think anyone who says that Trump is the only worst president the United States ever had in its lifetime, I think you're kidding yourselves. There are plenty of worse presidents. Bush, Reagan, Nixon, Woodrow Wilson, an actual authoritarian who put people in jail. Look it up, people. It's on NPR. I sent you an article about that. That got me thinking.
Didn't get around to reading it, but anyway, go ahead.
It got me thinking. I think it would be unrealistic if Star Wars wants to be somewhat realistic in its fantastical setting. Say that the Republic had only good or weak-willed chancellors, and then Palpatine was the first evil one. I don't think it's fair to say that Palpatine just comes out of nowhere. I actually think it'd be more interesting if the Republic had many slides into authoritarianism. It's just Palpatine went over the top with the whole Empire thing.
Mm,
Um, in Legends, actually, there was a string of Chancellor monarchs, pretty much from for that lasted 1,000 years. A single family withheld the chancellorship and unleashed human crusades against the Outer Rim. It was 25,000 years ago. It was the
mm,
era of Pious Day. All hail. Um, so I think that if we're going to one day expand the history of the Galactic Republic and its 25,000 year history, boy, I think it'd be more interesting to say that, you know what?
yeah.
Palpatine's not the first evil ruler the Galactic Republic's had. He might not even be the first evil chancellor who did a few genocides and some stingy stuff that the
Mhm,
Jedi were like, "Ooh, I don't know how we feel about this." Um, And I think, just say that Palpatine himself is building upon other evil chancellors' legacies from hundreds to not thousands of years ago. I think that would make the history of Star Wars more interesting to say that, you know what?
mm,
For every High Republic great quote unquote good time the Republic had, it's
mhm,
had many slides into authoritarianism before and probably will again. Even in Legends, it slid into authoritarianism again. Jason Solo didn't become emperor; he was the chancellor. No, he was the chief of state. My bad, they didn't have that
mhm,
term back then of the New Republic, and it slid back to authoritarianism pretty quickly.
mm,
Uh so I just think that that would make the Star Wars universe way more interesting, but that's just me. That's
mhm,
my thought of if I was in charge of expanding the history of Star Wars. Make the Republic have multiple eras of corruption and authoritarianism over its 25,000 year history and beyond.
yeah. I mean, it's definitely realistic, right? Um, I mean, we even I learned in my undergrad. I took a course on American politics. We learned about Andrew Jackson,
Ooh.
how terrible he was in Reconstruction, and yeah, I mean, Woodrow Wilson. That's interesting to know. I didn't know about that. Yeah, no, that's true. That does help us in the real world. Help us put history into context, into perspective, relativize things a little bit. I'll get to that in a bit when talking about Mask of Fear. But yeah, I mean, it seems real. That's true. It does seem realistic. Every golden ages presuppose dark ages. We could ask the question: is there such thing as a golden age? Is that even possible? Maybe I should have Sophia back on talk about how there's always evil all the time. it's a it's a theme, but yeah, that does definitely make sense. So I think, I mean, shoot, we have seen another uh another evil ruler leader, uh call him a supreme leader, uh and I'm not thinking about Snoke. I'm thinking about Kylo Ren, because you think about at least the political situation with the Last Jedi. Rey says the First Order will control all the major star systems within weeks. That isn't something that Rise of Skywalker necessarily picks up on, but effectively, the First Order has at least a measure of control over the galaxy at that point. And so, which is to say, I mean, I wonder if Charles Soule's probably going to go into this. That he's eclipsed his grandfather, right? He's become the emperor. Vader never became the emperor. Kylo Ren is the emperor, effectively. So you can, yeah, I mean, and in the narratively, we could say, does that cheapen the Lucas saga a little bit by repeating things? I mean, that's my feeling about Force Awakens a bit more. But I mean, this is the Last Jedi we're talking about, right? Nothing about the Last Jedi cheapens the Lucasfilms for me. So, uh, yeah, that's a good point. I will say, Palpatine is this archetype. He is there's nothing redeeming about him, and so therefore he is, and don't mean this as a critique. He is a plot device to be a foil for Anakin, effectively, ultimately, um, in the grand scheme of things. And so, yeah, I mean, to say isn't the only one, but he's the prime Sith, right? I mean, we're going to get into this too. He is all the Sith, and so he might not be the only one, but he's. I mean, it's the story we have, and I think we did an episode this maybe a year or so ago about the Skywalker saga. It isn't meant to. Time isn't meant to be so realistic, right? We're given these films as this outsized kind of outsized influence of this what is it, 60-year time period or whatever it is in this 25,000-year galaxy.
30 if we're just counting the Lucas stuff, but
yeah, but including the sequel trilogy.
yeah,
whatever 60-ish year time period,
more or less.
More or less. And so we could ask what makes these films, the time period in these films, special compared to. I mean, this kind of raises this question, right? More deeply. Maybe this whole episode we should do. What makes this the story in this time period more special compared to the rest of the time period? I mean, it is to be more. It's meant to be more impactful than the canon version of the Rasan Reformations and the Sith War and how that clears the deck. Right. The fall of the Empire and then the fall of the First Order clears the deck, and the fall of Hosnian Prime, the fall of the Republic, and all the institutions that had migrated from Coruscant to Chandrila to Hosnian Prime, if you will, or just reestablished on Chandrila and then established on Hosnian Prime, but now they're all gone. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see what the Rey film
and the Mangled movie, hopefully.
And the Mangled, yeah. Well, I mean specifically, what's it like afterwards? But yeah, true. What's it like beforehand? So
also,
yeah,
no, I'm about to say. Also, just kind of random aside, but something I wonder if the Charles Soule film will get into. Charles Soule film.
I wish something. He better.
Charles
Soule. Sorry, go ahead.
Charles Soule comic. Get into is since you haven't read Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire all the way. They mentioned that in Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, there's a little snippet near the end that says Coruscant never got occupied by the First Order. They tried to send fleets, but they always got repelled back. And that's it. They don't say anything else. So I'm like, I wonder if they'll expand on that or anything. So that'll be interesting. With a little plot point. I hope that gets expanded upon later. But that was it. That was all I wanted to bring up.
Who's there to repel them? Is there a Republic there? We don't know. Actually, we don't know. Probably. I mean all we know is
because in the Mandoverse, it seems like Coruscant's the head. There's a lot of government stuff going on.
Yeah, like it's still a major place, even though it's not the capital. Right. Although, I mean, wonder if they retcon that.
No, I don't think they're not going to change Hosnian Prime getting attacked. I think
no. I mean, in terms of say, like that may be a description between Coruscant and Chandrila being the capital. I wonder if that's going to be another thing between paper and screen.
They can just always say, "Oh, Chandrila got the capital," and then they switched it to Coruscant, and then they switched to Hosnian Prime, and then they moved it back.
Yeah, that's true. They could do that. So, of course, they all looked alike, right?
Right. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Anyway, that's my thing. It'd be cool if we saw another authoritarian chancellor, maybe who wasn't a Sith Lord, but just was a true blue republic. I love saying that, right? A true blue galactic Republican who just used authoritarian message but wasn't a Sith Lord. And just like, you have to keep the galaxy together because the actual Sith are attacking. So,
well, there's that, or because he just wanted to have power for himself. Interesting how we just assume it's gonna be a dude,
or she, or they, or them. That too.
Yeah, who knows? Anyway, speaking of the rise of the Empire. One thing I'll mention, I have started reading The Mask of Fear. I'm about 4 chapters in or so, finally. And again, the only thing I'll say, and I won't spoil anything anymore, I actually need to delete that video. I did a test on Wednesday just to see if it would work with my tethering. It worked fine. Anyway, I'm gotta delete that video. That's over on the Iron Canon channel. So if you want to watch that, go quick. But I actually did spoil something, so I got to take that down. Just about.
You can tell me later if you want to.
Sure. But only about chapter 1. Anyway, I will say though, I mean, as advertised, it's about the first few weeks of the Galactic Empire, and the way characters um, who expect democratic norms, expect due process, expect all these things, and suddenly, nope, no dice. This is an authoritarian government. We There's no review over uh, police actions or whatnot, or cruel and unusual punishments or things like that. Uh, there's no accountability for that because it's what the state actually wants to do. And in previous years, maybe if this was 4 years ago, if this was 3 years ago, this was, I guess, what, 16 years ago, whenever it was, when I was in Ohio with the Obama when was that? When was Obama? What year is it?
Well, we lived through
2025.
the George Bush administration, so the book
Sure,
would have been
but
useful then too.
to say now, it would have been a fun kind of escape. And now it's pretty stressful because it's not an escape. This is the real world now. I mean, it's
Or
been the
maybe it
real
always
world
has.
it has been, especially for Black communities and Hispanic American communities. It has been the real world, but there's always at least some resistance to it. At least in a lot of quarters. But now or at least it would be. I wouldn't see it, and that's not a good thing. It's good that I'm seeing it. It's not good that it's just so blatant and rampant. At least there would be voices who are able to stand up and oppose it. And it wouldn't be, what I'm trying to say. That's the thing about Trump, though, is, before it just would be considered uncouth, even with Bush, like it wouldn't be brazen. And it's just so brazen now. The way it is with Palpatine.
That's why Bush was scarier, I think. That's why Bush.
You can make that argument. I could see that. It's just there's less accountability. But I don't know. Is there less accountability now? Anyway, the point being with Mask of Fear, yeah, Alexander Freed saying, yeah, here's the real world now. Is America basically going to turn into Pinochet's Chile or something, or who knows what? So, that's,
we made Pinochet's Chile, so we're the
sure.
we're the father of the Pinochet's Chile. Let's not mince words there.
There's that. So there we go. Also, we're gonna have an election in a few months, and it's gonna be interesting. On a more positive note, I mentioned Insider issue 229. This is a positive note and more fun, and a very obvious point that stood out to me. So there's an article with kind of interview embedded in an article on D. Bradley Baker, and I don't read the articles in this magazine. I need to read them more. I just want to write for them. But yeah, D. Bradley Baker talking about making the clones distinct human characters, and how his performances and his ability to really differentiate between clone characters. He'd even make notes about, say, recurring characters that aren't necessarily the main core group, like characters other than Rex or Cody, like Jesse, like Fives, like them. He would make notes on them and try and bring them back and say, okay, got to do something a little different, right? Like the clone, I'm blanking on his name now, but the one that ends up going to a farm and marrying a Twi'lek, and a lot of different voices within this one clone voice, kind of the Tim Morrison kind of inspired by. And he makes a great point that he took on this responsibility of saying this was these are real human characters against this. I mean, kind of the point of view of the show, of course, is that it's this evil separatists who are, well, part of the point of view, the droids, right? There's just these machines, these expendable machines versus these not expendable clone people. And his performance was key to communicating that that he really infused a lot of thought and care into making them distinct characters so that we would connect with them. Again, it's an obvious point, but it just stood out to me how just another example, one of probably the biggest examples of how important his performance is, how just brilliant and talented and just virtuosic his performance is in Clone Wars, and then of course in Bad Batch, where he'd be just in a studio alone, some scenes, just being the whole cast, the Bad Batch, Penny Bradley Baker. So, one of the most, got to be now, given his body of work, one of the most important single performances in all of Star Wars. I know I'm not exaggerating, given the importance of Clone Wars to our understanding of the Lucas saga and of the Skywalker saga, and the whole political the political story throughout, especially the prequels. So yeah, read that article. It's a really well written article. I forget who wrote it. I should look that up. But yeah, that struck me. That stood out to me. I don't know if you have any thoughts there.
No, that just seems very. No, what else? What else can I add? I think everyone else has said everything has been said.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. Vikings just kicked a field goal. That's good. 10-3 Rams. Anyway,
as for your last point, I can't wait for February. I'm so glad you're reading an Alexander Freed novel. He's one of my favorite authors they have so far. I did just out of 4 chapters, in a non-spoilery way.
Yeah.
What's your vibe with Alexander Freed? This is your first taste of him. You read
Soul,
you read Blu-ray. I've read a little bit of Freed through Twilight Company and Alphabet Squadron, but this is your first little taste of his bona fides.
Oh yeah, it's really gripping, really well written, really getting into characters, but also pacing through the movement and the action of these chapters, and getting to these some small little reveals here and there about who this is or who that is, whatever. Nothing earth shattering yet, but or nothing Coruscant shattering yet, but yeah, he's got his craft down pretty clearly. So
nice. Well, I can't wait to go more in depth with the world building and whatnot.
Yes. That'll be fun. We definitely gonna do a good old fashioned book review, which we haven't done in way too long, on the Iron Canon podcast. So gotta do that. Alrighty, moving right along. Eyes on screen. Go on a screen story. There is a Star Wars. I'm loving it. I think you're loving it, Joel. Skeleton Crew. One more episode to go. Drops 24 hours from right now. But we're talking about episode 7. We're going to be in so much trouble. Joel, again, I'll throw this to you. What do you think of this penultimate episode in Skeleton Crew?
Very intense. I mean, everything's coming to a head now, and I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen at the end. I guess this is the penultimate episode, so it's it's time for the choices to be made and kind of everything to kind of come to heel. What's going to happen to all the money? What's going to happen to the kid? What's going to happen to Jod? Yeah, this is. I think you said it in your little unofficial video. This is a really well put together show. Everything just so miraculously paced and well structured, and kind of everything kind of just nicely kind of come to a head for these final few minutes of the episode. And next episode hopefully wraps it up in a nice little bow. I'm very curious to see where this all goes. And yeah, I don't know. I'm still kind of processing in a lot of ways, but yeah, this has been just a really quaint show. It also, I think it's been kind of nice to know that Star Wars can't do kind of smaller scale stories that aren't Galactic Saga adjacent in any way. This just seems to be a story, and there will be an ending, and hopefully the good one that wraps up. So yeah, this has just been quite a well crafted, put together series, and I can't wait to see how it ends. It's going to be probably fun.
Yeah, a few things. I mean, what I said there, and also on Tractor Beam, I will say, yeah, that we needed those character moments, especially in the previous episode, that didn't push the story along at all, as far as we know, like a big plot. But the moments that brought the four characters together, the kids together, so that everything them banding together in this episode was completely earned and believable and on point. And also to say, it's the one episode that does trade the drama on holding back the resolution of tension. It's the second last episode. It's okay. It's allowed. That's the precisely right place to do it. If you're going to do that, make one cliffhanger like that, is the exact best time to do it, because there's no more after this, right? Unless there is going to be season 2, which probably not. Makes sense to be a one and done. Yeah, like your point that they can do a smaller, by smaller meaning, not so interconnected story, or necessarily so interconnected, and it's all about execution. And again, they didn't trade the appeal on it being so connected to anything, which required them to really execute well. The Acolyte was connected, but it's 100 years removed from anything we've either read or seen, and so it also had the pressure to execute well, and it didn't as well as it should have or could have. And so, I'm kind of getting, obviously I want to see that story continue, but this shows just, again, the way pacing and character development are so you need to be so attentive to it. And John Watts, right? And everyone involved in this show is so attentive to seeing this series as a whole. I mean, that's the thing with the Acolyte. Unfortunately, we can pick out individual episodes that we either love or are scratching our heads about. With this one, it's they all hang together, and they all, I mean, yes, with the Acolyte and with everything, Ahsoka, they all require each other and they all build on each other. But in this show, not a moment's out of place, and that's really what you want. It all is building up to, again, what we're going to see in 24 hours. I think it's training us to be better engagers. We're not just consumers. We're not just passive consumers. We're not just mindlessly watching. It's training us to better engage with story.
Here's a great example of this, if I may, for this episode. We were like seeing, like, oh, is there going to be some Jod backstory and whatnot? And we actually read the interview. Jude Law just says this is the episode where you find out about his character. And I think we do. I think we find out about Jod's character. He's a greedy pirate who wants the money, and he's kind of a sad, broken, desperate man. We don't need an Order 66 flashback where Anakin Skywalker's holding the lightsaber to his throat. I mean, maybe we'll get a little bit of something more next episode for all we know, but outside of that, it's like, no, we know what Jod's character is like. He's kind of broken and sad. And but just like the moment when he had the money, it's like there's like a million different emotions all in that face of like, he scored, he's crying, he's laughing, he's
unhinged.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say it was really powerful with Reva. That moment in Kenobi, that was really powerful, and with Grogu. But we do get, I mean, that's the thing, we do get a bit of his backstory in this. What we get it is seeing his reaction to Wim, and this sense of jealousy that Wim grew up with a parent that loves him and all his material needs met, and and Jod's reaction to that suggests so strongly, it shows us that he didn't have that. We don't need to see it necessarily, because what it's doing is it's in relation to the main character. Wim is basically the main character, or one of the main characters. And so it's great. You're right. It's a great example of just brilliant, how to tell a story that's so character first, and character first, the characters at hand, and also that so well put together. So I mean, that's the thing, is the show did not get the hype. It did not get uh the attention. It's on the tail end of this whole Disney Plus thing, effectively, before this goes back to being a theater first franchise. But here we got low key one of the best live action Star Wars series we've ever gotten. Just
Oh yeah, this is definitely one of the stronger seasons overall of Star Wars TV. Like, it's up there with Mando season 1 and 2 for me, and obviously Andor season 1, of course, but that can't be beat. Those are like the first 2 seasons of Mando and Andor, and this are like some of the top tier first seasons of TV, of live action TV. I mean, let me distinguish that. Yeah, and I'm sure the finale will make it. I'm sure. I kind of don't think there's enough time to go into like large exposition of like, this planet was founded in the days of the High Republic or something like that. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But at this point, it's like I'm sure the finale will be great, and I'm excited for it. I am curious, like how it will end, because I'm saying I do think it won't get a season 2. I do think this was always kind of a one and done, but I think it'll be open-ended just enough to maybe, like, I don't know, someone out there makes it. Like, maybe Jod stays alive. I don't know if he dies. That's maybe he's in jail for all we know, to come back later, but I think this will be pretty conclusive.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
I still think the money gets destroyed, but that's just me.
That'd be interesting. I'd like that. I think that would be an interesting idea. I don't know. We'll see what happens in 24 hours. All right. Speaking of, sorry, I forgot to make a note thing for the next one. But anyway, I just did it quickly. See, on the fly. Speaking of live action Star Wars that I think is fantastic anyways.
Oh yeah.
I definitely loved Ahsoka
season
1.
Same here.
And we got some news with Ahsoka season 2 and what we thought might be happening. But we've heard this rustling in the winds of Peridea. There you go.
I made a prediction about this somehow, kind of.
Yeah. Is it? Yeah. Did you predict this? Or I'm trying to.
I predicted that there wouldn't be that much Ahsoka news because they're filming around the same time, but there might be a little bit in like the presentation opening, and they're like, they'll be like, hey, Ray Stevenson was in our hearts the whole time, but his character and his legacy will live on in this recast, introducing new person.
Yes.
And they announced our new person.
Yes. So the ever trusty Jeff Snyder in his newsletter broke that Balin Skull, again, formerly played by the late Ray Stevenson, played brilliantly, perfectly by the late Ray Stevenson in Ahsoka season 1. Now he's played by Rory McCann, better known as the Hound, or previously known as the Hound from Game of Thrones. Like you said, we thought this seems likely. I think this makes perfect sense. A lot of folks have talked about even his look. The Hound is a bit of a different character. Obviously, Balin doesn't have the kind of incident that the Hound has, but Rory McCann can bring that gravitas and that elderly wisdom to this character as well. Game of Thrones is this fantasy story, so there's definitely gonna be a lot of fantasy with what's going on in Peridea with these Mortis gods. So and a very driven character to be in the place of power, different from the Hound. Hound is more of a servant of the crown, or I forget who, but of whoever they're with. It's been a while.
I think they're with the Lannisters.
Yeah, with the Lannisters. Sure. But anyway, so glad to see this character go forward. I'm sure they're gonna, like you said, gonna be incredibly respectful of Ray Stevenson, his performance and his legacy, even in Star Wars, which was just 1 year. I think he didn't play anything else in Star Wars.
No. No, wait. I know he played I want to say he
Mhm.
played not Gar Saxons. He played I think he played one of the Saxons in Mandalorian.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Um.
He voiced them,
Anyway,
excuse me.
to yeah. So just his influence in Star and just Hollywood and performances in general. So, uh, yeah. Again, the biggest thing. This character is going to continue, and the story is going to continue because of how. I mean, it speaks to how important this character is to this story
Yeah.
and to Ahsoka and Sabine having this foil that's not quite an antagonist, but is um, on Peridia there. So, yeah, what did you think? Was your initial reaction to this news, and what do you think of it now?
Initial reaction was, "Oh, thank heavens they're continuing the character."
Mhm.
I was afraid they were going to write him out or something.
Yeah.
But no, I'm glad that the character is going to continue. I think his story is too pivotal to not continue
Mhm.
at this point. That means the story's not getting changed too much
Yeah.
between what's going on with Shin and Balin, of course. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's good casting. I can see it. I can see it. I think he'll bring a presence to the
Mhm.
character that Ray did. So that's good. Balin is one of my new favorite characters that they've
Mhm.
added in the last few years. I think he's so fascinating, and I think
Mhm.
whatever his goal is, whatever is calling to him, whatever he's looking for, is a really it's an interesting story. And I'm curious what he will find in Peridia. So
Mhm.
yeah, very very exciting. I'm kind of glad that this is continuing, and yeah, that's kind of it. I
Yeah.
can't really say anything else except till we have to wait till
Yeah.
2026 or next year
That's true.
to see it. So yeah.
Looking forward to this. I mean, you see episode 5, Ahsoka episode 5. I mean, that was Hayden Christensen, but I mean, and Ariana Greenblatt. They're also the rumor that we haven't gone to the rumor that that Ewan McGregor and Ariana Greenblatt are coming back.
Mhm.
Uh, well, Ewan McGregor is coming into this show. I don't know what capacity.
According
That's
to
a, I,
rumors, these
I
are
think that's a
rumors.
rumor.
These are all
I,
rumors.
I heard a rumor, but the
I
Balin
heard,
Skull thing that is Jeff Snyder official. So, yeah,
and the
but
Hollywood Reporter has reported it too.
yeah, well,
So
okay, Hollywood Reporter. Good to know. That's also official. Uh, alrighty. I think that's it for our preamble discussions. Take it with the main topic, galactic identity. Get the spelling right there. Galactic identity in Star Wars. Take it away.
all right. So I guess I'll begin with another question. Let's open with a question. Matthew,
Mhm.
if I were to ask you, how do you primarily identify yourself? What would you
Wow.
say?
That's a great question.
Are you Canadian
I mean, the first
person?
thing to go is it would say Christian, and then Canadian. White skin, ethnically Jewish. Actually, I haven't gone into that much, but yeah, male, straight. Uh, my social media is Anglican, Star Wars, Association football, Folkmore guy. So there we go. My kind of my fandoms. Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, I
Um,
should also talk about friendly, intelligent, all those things. But yeah,
you know what I mean. We could
yeah,
go into the ethnically Jewish. We could talk about that the
yeah,
thing later. We can talk about that with the Jedi.
yeah.
Anyway, I don't know how I would go first. I guess male, then Californian, then maybe American. I guess,
Hmm.
then Star Wars fan. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that being said, that with that question out of the way,
Hmm.
how are the people of the galaxy far, far away, the GFFA, as fans have shortened it, Guffa of the
Guffa.
Guffa, identify themselves? Probably not as the Guffa, right?
Yeah.
Like, how does Chewbacca see himself first? Does he see himself primarily as a Wookiee? Does he see himself as a Kashyyykan? Is that even a word? Is he a galactic Republican, citizen of the New Republican? The New Republican? Or New Republican? Does Luke? What does Luke? Would in New Hope? Is he a Tatooinean? I guess.
Hmm.
Is he a Skywalker? Is he a part of the Lars Homestead?
Hmm.
And I think about this because I think it bears the question of when we have seen the galaxy far, far as he sees himself as human. 'Cause in Star Wars, you can
Hmm.
see yourself as your alien race. We are humans. Technically,
Right.
we are
Yeah.
we
Well,
are Homo
hopefully more than
sapiens.
technically.
We are Earthlings.
Yeah,
We are the Homo
yeah,
sapiens, I guess, is
yeah.
our official designation.
Right. I didn't even say
Uh,
human.
are you?
Anyway,
You're
sorry, go ahead.
secretly a Vulcan.
Right.
uh, uh,
Sorry, go ahead.
yes. I'm
Vikings
kidding.
fan.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But in Star Wars, we have seen in expanded media sometimes, the Star Wars galaxy has a very loose definition of society. I feel like, especially on a galactic level. I don't think, honestly, it's hard. I maybe me. This is my hot take. I feel like in a lot of ways there really isn't a galactic society. I think there's
Mm,
planetary societies. I think there are the alien species, just in terms of how they identify themselves.
mhm,
Obviously, there's little tribes and planets, but on a galactic scale, there is. I feel like galactic society, in terms of
mhm,
science fiction. Oh, Star Wars is science. In terms of fictional universes in space,
mhm,
Star Wars has almost the loosest galactic factional basis to it, even compared to, say, like Star Trek. Weirdly enough, where I feel
mhm,
like Star Trek has a more has on terms of galactic societies has a more almost hardened base, where you have Vulcans and humans and all the other little aliens in the Federation. I feel like the Federation has a more of a firm identity on a galactic scale,
mhm,
and even like the Klingon Empire. Although all you see is Klingon, you don't actually see other creatures in the Klingon Empire outside the Klingons
mhm.
and the Romulans. Again, kind of they're just one homogeneous group. You don't really see other Romulan colonies and who belong to them.
You see
But
the Remans, but that's one film.
I guess so. And that's one again,
Mhm,
like you said, that's one film. But like the Galactic Republic, I don't know. There's no. It doesn't feel like there is outside of what little we see a societal thing of being Galactic Republican. You see the Naboo, they wear Naboo things. You
mhm,
see the Coruscanti, you see they do Coruscanti things. Even in Coruscant, it's like Coruscant's a multiple aliens and humans and all the other creatures mixed together.
mhm,
Legends, it was more human centric and kind of the home of the humans. Um, but Galactic Society is oddly very loose in Star Wars.
mhm,
In fact, the only time we actually see something on a galactic scale that's societal, in my opinion, is the Empire, when humans and the Sith are trying to impose a homogeneous societal order on
Right.
everybody else, which
Right.
is basically we're the humans, we're in charge. If you're an alien, screw you. Um, so that's in the First Order, which is an extension of the Empire. So
Mhm,
kind of same thing. So yeah, I think it's just one of those interesting things about the Star Wars galaxy of how it's so loose. It's not even the people who serve the Republic honestly see themselves first as Republican. The Jedi always call themselves the Jedi Order first. They're Jedi affairs.
mhm,
You know, Padme is a senator from Naboo, and Palpatine's a Sith, but we'll get to that later. So,
mhm.
yeah, Matthew, I'll toss this to you. What are your thoughts on the fact that Star Wars, as a fictional universe, has a very loose galactic society, even compared to like something you like Star Trek?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting given both Gene Roddenberry's and George Lucas's influences there uh, on this kind of very liberal American ideal
Hmm.
of uh, you know a pluribus unum, right, from the many one. Uh, yeah, that I do think there's room here to say the ideal is that diversity is strength. I
Hmm.
mean, that's kind of the implication of a pluribus unum is, uh, you know, uh, from the many one. I mean, what's interesting is, the quotes I mentioned off the top. We are all the Republic, and the Republic will be reorganized to one galactic empire for safe and secure society. These are efforts in state building, in unitary state building. I think where what Lena So is trying to do is to say, here you have Starlight Beacon, for example, or the Valo Fair, have your culture contribute to the greater whole. At least that's
Hmm.
the ideal. whereas the Nile on the one hand and the Empire on the other say no. And the Nile is saying no, we're gonna go off and do our own thing and do what we want, and the Empire is saying we're gonna impose this uniformity on everything. And so, I mean, I think it's more a matter of trying to find a middle ground between the two, because what we see, especially again in the prequels, is these. Well, we see Coruscant, and we see on Coruscant again the ideal of the Senate coming together, being this place of debate and discussion, and we see that breaking down because corporate corruption and Palpatine's machinations have eroded a sense of the common good and eroded the sense of a we that Lena So, and I think even the Jedi tried to work towards. Oddly enough, the Jedi, oddly enough,
I don't think it's oddly enough. I always think the Jedi are very much about the we.
Yeah, oddly enough, in that they're at their best, they're able to, you're right, say, we want peace and justice, to be the guardians of peace and justice for everyone. I've always found it interesting that in Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan's plea to Anakin is not, my allegiance isn't to the Force and to the Jedi, it's to the Republic and to democracy. And I can see two things there. I can see there's probably two things going on at once there. It's, on the one hand, he's saying, look, my allegiance is to the common good and to the well-being of everybody. He's also saying, even I'm part of this institution that's forgotten the way of Qui-Gon. I've honestly found that statement odd. To say, my first allegiance isn't to Canada and Canadian democracy. It isn't. It's compatible in some respects to Christian faith and the global perspective that my faith calls me to. At least ideally, like when Canada, our reputation as being the big coalition builders, literally invented UN peacekeeping. Lester Pearson, back when UN peacekeeping was the needed thing. Now we need to move beyond that towards responsibility to protect and things like that. But and coalition building and whatnot. But it's that's the thing, is there's
well, I think that's just the Lucas model. I mean, I think I've always said I don't think Lucas sees the Jedi as more devoid from the Republic. I think Lucas sees the ideal as the Republic and the Jedi working together. As I've always said, the ideal Jedi are in the Phantom Menace. Lucas doesn't see the Jedi as flawed until they enter the Clone Wars. But in Phantom Menace, that's how the Jedi are supposed to be. That is his ideal Jedi Order. And if he had done episode 7, 8, 9, I think you would have seen that.
Maybe. I mean, that would have proven a lot of people wrong. But
oh yeah, I mean, there's lots of interviews to very much say otherwise, to back up those points.
I will say though that allegiance to society versus, I mean, I don't know, because I'd say Qui-Gon is the ideal Jedi. And Qui-Gon,
I don't know if Lucas would agree though. If you,
that's interesting. I mean, like, send me a quote. I'm sure you know a quote there, but the ideal Jedi being. Oh, I mean, I wonder if Filoni, in writing Ahsoka's story, then.
Well, true, but Filoni and Lucas,
they're different people, as we've done an episode on that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, interesting. We're talking about identity. We're talking about allegiance and ultimate allegiance.
I mean, here's another quote from Obi-Wan in episode 3 earlier. When in this hallway scene where Anakin's like, "I don't want to spy on the Chancellor." And Obi-Wan's saying, "Stop playing." Obi-Wan goes, "Our allegiance is to the Senate, not to its leader, who has managed to stay in office quite long after his term has expired." Right.
So the allegiance is to the Senate, not to the Force.
Right.
Right. I think Qui-Gon would say, no, your allegiance is to the living Force. Be mindful of the living Force.
And I would argue, though, that I don't think Qui-Gon I think Qui-Gon is actually more a pro-Republic person than I think the fandom has taken, though.
Oh, sure. Like, he would say I think it's a matter of priority. It's a matter of, how do I put this? It's just, it's the thought process, right? And so, in this context,
Mhm.
allegiance to the Force is allegiance to democratic norms, because it's allegiance to human dignity. Here I go. In the 60s, and this was, a lot of different churches came together and started to understand. Well, yeah. Well, first of all, the idea of modern democracy came out of the Protestant Reformation. The idea of locating human dignity in the person
Mhm.
came from that. In the 60s, the Catholic Church starts to say, "Oh yeah," well, not starts to say, like finally, uh, definitively says, "Oh yeah, democracy is a good idea
Mhm.
because it's essential for promoting human dignity." Like the document where they affirm religious freedom and human dignity is called affirm religious freedom and democratic norms is called of human dignity. It's not called democratic norms. So it's a matter of priorities, a matter of order of operations. And so um and I think maybe I'm kind of getting around the topic here, but in sense of saying um the implication for Qui-Gon, I think, would say the implication of being uh having your allegiance being to the living force, your identity being rooted in the living force, is that you are going to support democratic norms, and that involves legitimate diversity, in the sense, but in coming together as a common society. It's a matter of it being implications rather than the first cause. Whereas, yeah, maybe Obi-Wan, maybe George Lucas would say, no, it's the first cause. Um,
Well, I mean, a lot of George's basic backstory
yeah.
of the Jedi is, 1,000 years. The Jedi were these knights who
Mhm.
protected the Republic, and it thrived, and it was great. And then the Republic Senate got corrupt, and then
Mhm.
he tricked the Jedi to go into this war. Then the Republic betrayed the Jedi and shot them all.
Yeah.
So, uh,
Mhm.
but George has gone on about like how they're martial like the mafia. Like Luke wants to be a police officer. He says he in back in 1983 with
Right.
not 81 with Lawrence Kasdan. He talked about Luke. He's like, he's a warrior. He's a knight. He does not want to be the mayor. He does not want to be president. He was sworn to be a police officer, and that's what he wants to do.
Mhm.
So yeah, George was always very much like they're cops and marshals and the
Mhm.
mafia. I don't know why he always says the mafia, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of always been George's ideal. It was they're marshals. They go in, they negotiate.
Mhm.
Like what they're doing in Phantom Menace. Like they're going to negotiate with the Trade Federation. Trade Federation tries to kill them.
Mhm.
Okay, we tried being nice. Swords out, buddy.
Yeah.
Gonna kick some butt.
No. I mean, that does bring up, Daughters of Ferrix, their ACAB episode, right?
Oh, I mean, to
Yeah.
be fair, I'm not. I mean, to be fair, not everyone
Yeah.
agrees with the George Lucas ideal. I'll just
Right,
say.
and that's I'm saying, what if Qui-Gon wouldn't have agreed with the George Lucas ideal? Um, but I think maybe to say then the George Lucas ideal is not. I guess to bring it back to my point before, it's not that different from the Gene Roddenberry ideal.
They
They're
are
both
nice.
kind of they're both in the same Californian 60s soil.
Oh
It's
yeah.
just that Roddenberry looked at, okay, what if things actually turn out well by having reason, common good, and George Lucas is saying, well, excuse me, I mean Vietnam and World War II, and
Mhm.
our own passions and desires and fears are actually going to continually draw us to make us go south. And also, that's a very Christian idea, right? I was getting at, that
Here's a
we're
here's a
always pulled in that direction.
here's an odd statement, and then we can move on.
Mhm.
Think of the Jedi as like Starfleet, but if the president of the Federation turned evil
Yeah, maybe I'll think of that.
and with magic.
Yeah.
Ooh. I mean, they're called Jedi Knights. What are they knighting if they're not knighting an entity themselves?
Well, by the right of the council, by the will of the force.
I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
called Jedi Knights, though. What are you gonna knight? What? I mean, that's the question. What's a Jedi without the Republic?
Well, here's the thing: by the right of the council, by the will of the Force, we call you Knight of the Republic. So, I mean that's a discussion we've had plenty of times. So,
well, I mean, I'll go to another thing. Kind of to get back on our point a little bit. The ideas of statecraft and state building.
Yeah,
it's complicated business, I will say. It goes back to the days of when the caveman decided he's going to be the head caveman and going to tell other cavemen what to do. State building goes back thousands of years. And kind of in the High Republic or just the Galactic Republic and the Empire, we see two very different types of tactics of state building. First off, state building on a galaxy level is probably realistically impossible. Like, to some extent, like, this is like ridiculous. Like, it's low-key ridiculous in some extent.
The galaxy is really big, as Douglas Adams was saying.
It's really big. It's hard to govern a big country like America or Canada or Russia or China, let alone a planet or a galaxy, right? That's why a lot of bigger countries like the U.S., like Canada, even objectively, technically Russia, India, China's more unitary. Actually, had a pretty good track record being unitary going back to the emperors. They're federations. What little I know of Canada politics, and it's very little, you guys are apparently even more federalized or confederalized than we are in America, weirdly enough. Or at least what I've heard. Maybe I'm wrong. You're not as unitary because you're a big country. You're big, not big, and Russia is oddball because technically they're a federation. Putin kind of found ways to kind of get around that and kind of re-unitarify the Russian Federation. India, as a subcontinent, they're a federation. They are very much have always had, autonomous regions and whatnot. So, that's another interesting thing in that I would even argue even Palpatine's experiment of trying to create a unitary galaxy. And I hope I'm not turning this into statecraft discussion, but it has to do with identity. So we're fine. Is, at least if you ever read the old Imperial source book from the 80s, and it goes into this newer stuff too, is that, Palpatine never changed the law of the planets that much. He most planets kept their local governments intact. Most planets kind of did not always change that drastically, depending on where you lived. In some ways, Palpatine couldn't create a unitary empire. It almost was more like a feudal empire, where all these mobs kind of just ruled over their feudal territories, and the only allegiance was to him. That's why when he croaks, how he gets exploded, empire just crumbles into all these feuding warlords. Because in a weird way, the empire is actually a very decentralized political entity. The only thing that binds it together is just Palpatine himself, just because he made it that way. So, in an odd sense, Palpatine devolved power even more, even though he had unlimited power. So it's one of those weird situations of the Empire is actually not that unitary as one would think, but both Palpatine also managed to have all the power. So, if anything,
I don't know. Pick one.
No, it makes sense. It's just
on the books, Moffs had say were kings in their little castles on the books. One of the great quotes are, the Roman Empire only happened when the army marched through. The difference here is that the Moffs are wearing military uniforms, and Moff is effectively a military rank. I mean, it is a civil rank, but that's the thing an authoritarian government does, is it completely collapses the distinction between military and civilian, so that there's military control over the over civilian society. I don't know. I think there's
the Galactic Empire goes into this a lot better than I am right now.
Yeah, maybe that would be a good resource for it. I mean, I think one of the big things. Here's the odd thing: one of the big drivers of the fracture and the shattering are the Death Stars. This Tarkin doctrine, where you rule through fear, versus the tag doctrine, which and Kieran Gillen's Darth Vader comic goes into this, right? And I'm sure there's some. This is from Legends too. It sounds like something Legends would go into. The Tarkin doctrine is you rule through fear. You say you you pour all your resources into this massive super weapon that can destroy a planet, and so star systems fall in line out of the potential that their entire planet would be destroyed. And so you can you can get the idea that you can do away with the Senate, because you got this Death Star, you don't need it. Whereas Tag was saying, no, what are you doing? And Thrawn was also saying this in the canon novels. What are you doing, pouring all your resources into this one big super weapon that's this massive circle? Might as well have circles within it. It's literally a target.
Yeah, so true.
Literally a target for the rebellion. The more you clench your fists, the more star systems slip through your fingers. Leia says that on the Death Star. Versus the Tag doctrine, which Thrawn would have clearly subscribed to, is invest all your resources into the ISD fleet and have the standard Star Destroyers, which are huge and looming and menacing, able to go anywhere and actually cause havoc and march the army through. And so there was the idea of a unitary state. I do think, yeah, he left. Palpatine may have left the books intact, the laws on the books intact, but when there's a Star Destroyer bombarding your planet, the laws don't matter. And so, he is able to enforce unitary authoritarian state. The difference, and this is the thing about federalist theory, right? And federalism itself is the idea that, and this is what Lena So is trying to do, right? She's trying to say, let's acknowledge the local and affirm the local as part of a whole, as part of things coming together. That's the idea of the U.S. Senate. That's the idea of saying, so with Canada, it's U.S. style federalism with British style parliamentary monarchy. We have our head of state is this bloke across the ocean who doesn't have actually any power. This guy named Charles.
Yeah.
This chap named Charles. He doesn't have any power. What we have is these tiers between the federal government and the provinces, and some of that is determined through case law. Some of that is listed in the Constitution, but a lot of it's just determined through case law. That's developed through history, and then we have our Charter of Rights and Freedoms that has a lot to do with language rights, and that was the reason of that, because that was the big conflict, the big identity conflict in Canada over the last century or so, was this other nation that speaks another language, and can they have the rights? It gets more interesting now in the 21st century in that multiculturalism and religious pluralism and gender identity pluralism and all these other diversities, are here. They're also, of course, in the US. They're everywhere in the world. It's a question of how do we navigate. And this, I think, is the question. I mean, this is the real world question. And different Star Wars stories go into it. And I think High Republic does go into it as presenting an ideal. How do we navigate all these different identities and different convictions while maintaining a sense of the we, maintaining a sense that we're actually coming together in having faith in the table itself, or modifying or reforming the table so that more people can sit at it. Right. Otherwise, there's going to be people who always want to throw out the table, which might be. I think what what's interesting with the High Republic is it starts with a great disaster. And this is another thing my mind is going to with this whole question. And it's going to it because I don't know how many miles away from you, there's a pretty big disaster happening. And it's bringing out two different impulses. And COVID brought out two different impulses.
I lived through 9/11, so
and 9/11 was like, yeah, it was it was a great example, right? It brought out in a crisis, we will either band together and say share our resources and say we actually only if we share our resources we can make it through together, survive. If we have the vision of that we are all one group and one people, can it forge this idea that we're one together? I think about I brought my mom went to COVID because thinking about the Eras tour and how this was it's the single greatest collective act of gathering since COVID, right? It's the greatest. It's the most highest grossing, best attended music tour of all time. In part because COVID said no, we got to push this all apart, and we got to actually gather together and band together. At the same time, 9/11, COVID, hopefully not the LA fires, but I don't doubt it. I wouldn't be surprised. A lot of people saying me and mine. I'm going to go to the store and just buy up all the toilet paper. I'm afraid of running out.
Well, that's what happened during COVID. So
yeah, yeah.
let me put it this way, Matthew. Let's not change history here.
Sure.
After 9/11, Bush had like a 90% approval rating.
Yeah.
And then the national security state happened and the Iraq war happened because that's what he used his popularity on. So that's the reason why if another 9/11 happened, God forbid, I don't think Trump's ever going to get a 90% approval rating. I think he's probably just going to get a 50, his usual 40.
Sure.
Like, I think it's sort of like we sort of lost trust because like last time somebody had a 90% approval rating for 5 seconds, look what that happened. In fact,
go for it. Let me finish your point.
That's another reason why I think Bush is a worse president than Trump because Bush he was a lot more insidious. At least his team was in making those authoritarian institutions like the NSA and the Emergency Powers Act and whatnot, which George was always talking about in the prequels. There's the whole article of the prequels are an allegory for the Bush administration.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the thing about Trump is, he represents the implications of all that time period, right? He represents the great fear that the great crisis of pluralism, the great crisis of immigration. To a lot of people who are used to owning the table, having to share it now is a crisis, and they're afraid of their survival. If they thought their survival is based on owning the table. And so they're hunkering down and saying, no, I'm going to just protect me and mine. And Trump is giving voice to those folks. Maybe that's the thing is it's out in the open for there to be a reckoning. I think maybe is what you're getting at here. I think Tyler chime in here. If we see a line, say thought he would have used to bound together like the previous opportunities. Not everyone, of course. There's a line. So maybe go into Tyler what you're getting at here. So like what do you see? Are you seeing that aid is people are banding together, or that aid is being restricted? Because
it's Mike Johnson, the speaker, said like, he think about reducing aid to California fires because of something.
Yeah, all the blaming and all that. So so anyway, to say, that's interestingly though. Thinking about response to the crisis of the empire is for a very diverse rebellion to come together.
It's not called a rebel alliance for a reason.
Exactly. The crisis of the response to the crisis of the First Order is for a resistance to band together.
Although that's actually something interesting, and maybe something the book will go into and maybe even I think Andor season 2 might go into, because Saw Gerrera was talking about it. I always think back to what that Saw Gerrera scene from Andor, and he's talking about, like, can we really have an alliance together? We have this group, New Republican, this guy, a separatist, the Gorman Front, the human supremacist. I want to know about those guys. Those guys are creepy. How are you not human supremacist enough for the Empire? How's the Empire not human supremacist enough? That's scary. Right? And it's like, well, but at the end of the day, what is the Rebel Alliance called? But the Alliance to Restore the Republic. So I'm like, well, what happened then to all those separatists? And what happened to all those Gorman guys? Why is the rebellion mostly just a new Republican? I hate saying that word. A new Republican.
An alliance to restore the Republic, right?
Yeah, right. Like, what happened to the other guy? Maybe Andrew will go into that, and like maybe there's like a purge or something. I don't know. Because like that's kind of an interesting. Okay, I'm ready to go. I need to go some real world. Are you ready to go with some real world stuff, Matthew? Ready for me to give the real world parallels?
Yes, I just have one point about Saw Gerrera, though.
Okay. Well, let's kind of
get he too represents this fearful protection of me and mine. I do think, but anyway, we can go into that. Go ahead. What do you think? Where are you going with this?
So I'm sure you've been keeping up with events in Syria, right?
The which, sorry?
In Syria.
A little bit. Not too much. Not closely enough, but yeah.
It's interesting. At the end of the day, you had the kind of a bunch of rebel groups, kind of all backed up. I don't want to make it too 1-to-1. There's a lot more foreign CIA stuff going on. But at the end of the day, group that won was not a very diverse alliance. It was a kind of religious conservative grouping that won the day. So I just think it's interesting that in Star Wars as well, the Rebel Alliance is somewhat diverse, of course. I mean, they got aliens and Mon Cala and Wookiees. But Mon saw, I guess now Andor, because they retconned he's not a separatist anymore. The Dodonna, Draven, Akbar, they all ideologically are kind of more aligned with each other. I mean, maybe the book will go into why some of the differences Bail and Mon Mothma have, but they're not that different outside of maybe some cosmetic stuff. It's not like Mon Mothma wants the separatists, but then her Akbar is like, Count Dooku was a genius in my day, and they're having
those visionary.
He was a visionary. You're like, right? Like, no, they both fought Count Dooku during the Clone Wars, and Mon, Bail, Akbar, they all were fighting the separatists, all the leadership. So I think that's also kind of interesting. That for a Rebel Alliance, and mostly because of expanded material, most of the leadership kind of are pretty homogeneous. Homogeneous, that's the right word. Right? So I just think that's interesting, and maybe Andor season 2 will get into this.
Yeah.
Did you have a point or anything you want to add to that before I move to the next part?
I mean, yeah, I do hope they get into that. I mean, I think if Saw and being able to play ball with Mon, he could. I mean, that's the other side. There's almost a left wing version of the diversity the tolerance paradox, the intolerance paradox, in that if you're so critical of a regime that anyone who wants to sees the need to do a more nuanced, agile, flexible response, like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, you're gonna find yourself on the outside of that too, right? I think if folks, I mean, this is more of a personal thing, but I think a lot about folks who.
Well, the separatists did kill his sister, so I could.
But this speaks to that. Like he never transcended that. And again, it's grieving and it's difficult. My mind goes to a lot of folks who really base their whole personality on what they're against, and spend so much time and energy critiquing, because if they aren't critiquing enough, it means they're giving into this thing that caused them so much harm in the past. And so, I mean, it's almost as if Saw is blaming Mon and Bail for killing Stila. And that's how trauma works, right? It makes you confuses this to that, when this is not that.
I'll be curious to see how Mask of Fear handles this, because this is Saw
Yeah.
Day 2.
Yeah.
The pain is still very real. It probably only happened like a few months ago.
And at this point, the schism between Saw and Mon hasn't happened yet.
That too.
So
That too. Now it just makes me wonder, like, if I wonder how Ahsoka would react to like some anti-Empire people, and then they were like, Count Dooku was right, and he was the best leader we ever had, and like, Ahsoka saw Count Dooku like full on Sith mode with red lightsaber, and it's like, I saw the real dude. He was evil.
yeah, I kind of hope she'd be like, let me break some too.
I saw General Grievous and his evil machinations, right? I mean, Separatist as an identity is interesting too, right? Count Dooku created the Separatist identity out of disenfranchised people with some rightful grievances, general grievances. Obviously through manipulation and evil cisness. But that did forge an identity that outlived him. We know this. There are still people who like wish for the old days of the Separatists to come back, and so that's even beyond their local planetary. There are probably some Nemoidians who are like still see the Separatists as a good thing, or some Geonosians who are alive before the Empire.
Yeah, I mean that Christopher Lloyd's character. I love that line. It's so funny. So it's so random. Like Count Dooku was a visionary. Love it.
Yep. Although also the Empire turned separatists into anti-alien sentiments as well, in terms of the human supremacy of it all. It's interesting. So I guess another. Do you want one more point before I? Okay.
I'm good.
Another interesting thing about the identity is, of course, in Star Wars, people identify with their religion, which is very much the truth of the matter. A lot of people may see their first identity first as Christian or Muslim or Jewish or Hindu or Buddhist or insert other thing that I might not be missing. And in Star Wars, they're Jedi, Sith, I guess Mando. It's a creed. They see themselves as that before they see themselves as human, Togrutan, Trandoshan, Wookiee, Hutt, right? Which is always interesting, because it's like I always get a little. Although maybe this is like the Jewish allegory coming back into play here with the Jedi, where people always say, "Well, the Jedi, they're a race of wizards." It's always weird when they call the Jedi a race. Like you always call. I've heard stories say the Jedi race, and I'm like, that's not how race works, buddy. I mean, to be fair, all identity to some extent is a social construct, even race to some extent. Gets a little Star Wars and science fiction fantasy gets a little iffy, because we do have legit genetic differences, of course, between Wookiees and Trandoshans and humans, multiple hearts and age range, stuff like that. But it's still truth to the soul that by the end, Luke Skywalker's not calling himself a Tatooinean. He's a Jedi like his father before him. The Emperor is all the Sith at the end of the day. He doesn't even see himself as an Imperial. It's interesting. The creator of the Galactic Empire doesn't even see himself as Imperial. He is above that. Even he is a Sith, and that is where his allegiances lie first and foremost. I remember even some of the comics. It's like Lord Vader, we have enemies to deal with, and then Vader's like, enemies of the Empire, Master. It's like, no, of the Sith. This is Sith business, not Empire business.
He doesn't give two womp rats about the Empire.
Nah, it's just
the Empire is just a pawn.
Right? Pretty much, yeah. It's like, Tarkin sees himself as Imperial, but Palpatine's like, nah, I'm a Sith. Sith business comes before that. Which is actually another difference between the Jedi, I think, and the Sith. The Sith see themselves first, therefore, Palpatine's like, the Empire, this political entity I created, whatever, I don't care, let it burn for all I care. It's just this business matters more. Whereas like Jedi, it's like, no, we must defend the Republic, because that is our sworn duty. We have sworn oaths, and did the thing, and we are knights of this Republic. We are simpatico. So Jedi business is in Republic business. Got us more or less the same kind of for the most part. We won't. Where it's like you're not gonna ignore Republic troubles because Jedi business is somehow more important.
Mhm.
Which it's kind of that selflessness in a little bit, where it's like Palpatine's like, yeah, Sith business is more important. Yeah, Empire can crumble for all I care. But I gotta deal with the Sith business.
Like Operation Cinder.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Take it out. I don't care. Just if I die, doesn't matter. So that's the thing, is that it's not that Palpatine's first allegiance is to the Sith. He's
probably to himself.
He's to himself, and that's where he gets his allegiance to the Sith, as kind of this secondary or way of speaking, right? The dark side is mastery of the self over the galaxy, whereas the ideal of the Jedi, is finding oneself within the harmony and the commonality, the common good of the galaxy, of society. And so ideally the two are sabbatical, like you said. They are compatible. Again, it doesn't matter. I guess maybe maybe it was quibbling about semantics here between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, if you will. But maybe that'd be an interesting thing to ask Dave Filoni versus George Lucas about, right? That thing we were getting at before. Yeah.
Well, here's a great example. For Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
If Anakin wasn't the chosen one, do you think he even would have bothered freeing the kid?
Right.
Wasn't there free slaves? He wasn't.
That's what I thought of. It's this weird negative thing of, he doesn't get so bogged down, if you will. He doesn't.
Got a mission.
He's just so focused on his mission. And of course, the one thing that can derail it is Anakin's midichlorian count, which is a clue. It's not the proof. It's just a clue, the sign that the Force has done something wonky and interesting to take note of. That's it is a good point. Oddly enough, I think Qui-Gon did care about slaves. I think he would have. I think, the kind of the counterpoint of that a little bit is to Jody Houser's Age of the Republic, Qui-Gon. If you've read that one, and I definitely recommend everyone read that one, because he basically predicts the Clone War, and the Clone War as the downfall of both the Republic and the Jedi. This great disaster, this great terror that the Jedi are not prepared to confront. And so, actually, I should read that, because I should read that again, just because I wonder if that also goes into that, if his concern is primarily with the destruction of the Jedi, or if it's more. That's the thing. Is it a both and? That's kind of what you're getting at. Is with the Sith, it can never be both and. Whereas with the Jedi, ideally, it has to be.
I'm not quite sure now if this has changed because of canon and how that's all worked out. But in the Plagueis novel, Sifo Dyas does order the clone army, and he orders it for the Republic. It's an army. A Jedi orders an army for the Republic. So Sifo Dyas, at least, him, Jedi, Republic.
It's interesting. I don't remember that part. I thought Palpatine and Dooku were the ones who order it, or Plagueis and Palpatine are the ones who do it. But
Plagueis tells Sifo Dyas to order it, and Plagueis, as Hugo Damas says, "Hey, I'll be, call me up. I got an account, and I'll give you the loan."
Okay, so he convinces Sifo Dyas to do that for the good of the galaxy.
Yeah, for the good of the Republic. Yeah, and the Jedi, and which is the galaxy, because it's all the same to him. So,
sure.
So there's a big difference. The Mandalorians, that's the third faction. Beyond that, they're kind of, as with the Mandalorian show, we sort of evolved once again. They're not just a people on a planet. They can come from anyone or anything, like we used to in Legends, where it's like you don't have to be a blonde, blue-eyed warrior or redhead. You can be a tiny little baby Yoda and a Mandalorian. You can be Wookiee Mandalorian. You can be a lizard Mandalorian. I don't know what's underneath the armor or his helmet. For all we know, we may never know.
Might have been Trandoshan. No, he doesn't speak like one though. So.
Maybe she learned to fake it. Right? That's galactic basic. There's language as an identity, right? Chewie doesn't speak basic. Some I don't know if Wookiees can. Some Wookiees can.
Mhm.
A little bit, at least in legends.
Bury never
Like
does.
Murray never does. It's actually interesting. Droid. Beacon Droid. Jedi don't really standardize always speaking basic. Some of them do, of course. Some of them don't.
Mhm.
Um, I guess in the Rebel Alliance they do. Some of that's just because they probably got too. Nine Dub never does. He speaks Celestian, which is just Swahili in real life because they got a Kenyan actor just to speak in his native tongue. Um, so rebels can speak basic or their
Mhm.
local language, and everyone's cool with it. It's only the
Yeah.
Empire that needs to speak basic and be British.
Well, Coruscanti.
Of
That's
course,
interesting, right? Because in universe, of course, the British accent is the Coruscanti accent. It's
right,
why both Leia and Padme put on that accent.
right.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Mhm.
Nabooian and Gungans living together. But what do the Gungans see themselves? Do they see themselves as the Gungan, or do they see themselves as a Nabooian first? That's an interesting
Yeah.
question.
And it's
Uh,
pretty clear they see themselves as Gungans. But that brings up the point, right? Is to have these layers and these complexities of
mhm,
identity to say, here I am, but I'm not, you know, here's the thing, yeah, we have this tendency to band together as people who are like-minded or of the same tribe or whatever. But then we do that and we find differences within us, right? We're always gonna find things to differentiate ourselves.
mhm,
Maybe in part because we want to say, yeah, I'm me, I'm special, or whatever, I'm unique. But
mhm,
the idea is we're all meant to contribute, not in the Borg or the Galactic Empire way, but contribute our unique perspectives and experiences as communities and as individuals, as persons,
mhm,
to the well-being of the whole. And so, and again, that's the ideal.
mhm,
Um, some are valued more than others for injustice sake or simply for practicality's sake. But the ideal is, we come together and say, French language concerns of losing that heritage and losing that identity. Okay, well, let's come together and have a charter of rights and freedoms that protect language rights.
mhm,
Um, then English speakers in Quebec say, okay, well, we need that protection for us within Quebec, and so they have that too.
mhm,
And that gets conflictual, right? I mean, there's a whole thing about can you have uh are you allowed to have English at all on signs in Quebec? Uh do you have to, or at least you have to have French first and then have English? Different laws and different things come out.
mhm,
The fear of defending me and mine, out of that, they said, no, we have to secede and we have to prohibit English. And
mhm,
that caused a lot of tension. Right. Um, and it was kind of a lot of English, and there's another thing, a lot of Anglophones then started casting this sovereignty movement as the villain
mhm,
in Canadian politics. Now a lot of folks cast, it's now back to the old liberal conservative divide primarily. Um, but yeah, that's a big part of the story is, are
mhm,
you going to contribute your uniqueness and unique perspectives to the whole?
mhm,
Or are you going to be afraid of eroding it and therefore secede or clamp down? Or if you are used to being, again, used to being controlling the table, are you going to try and impose that on the whole? And that's,
Nationalism is an
yeah,
interesting thing when it comes to identity too, and
yeah.
especially when we're going back to the whole state building thing
Well,
for
yeah,
'em,
with Quebec and with the United States, right? I
not
mean,
just Quebec in the United
yeah,
States, but look at Spain. I don't know
yeah,
how much you know about Spain, but you know,
similar story,
we're in,
right?
we're in the Franco years. The ETA, the I forget what's that region that we want to succeed but never does.
Catalonia,
Catalonia is like
yeah,
Franco. He was like gonna gonna put the
yeah,
kibosh on that,
and
and
he outlawed Catalan, right?
pretty much. I
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
knowing Franco. But
mhm,
it's a in some ways these responses so when it comes to like secession and whatnot is also very much It's not. It's a two-way street between what's the center trying to do with the periphery, what's
Right.
Coruscant trying
Yeah.
to do
Exactly.
to Lothal or Mon Cala, and
Hmm.
how do they respond to that? And sometimes, unfortunately, you can't always control how that happens.
Yeah.
There could have been a Mon Cala nationalist, we're going it alone rebellion that probably would have been bombarded by massive imperial forces, and that wouldn't have been fun for anybody.
Hmm.
Um, but it happens, of course, and there's a reason why some planets are suspicious of the wider galactic government. I swear there's a story, and maybe I'm thinking of Corellian legends, of a planet that just does not well, I mean, Mandalorian wanted to be neutral during the Clone Wars, and
Hmm.
look how that turned out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
um but I wonder, and maybe in the future story one day, they'll be like, Mandalorian is suspicious of galactic governments. We haven't had a good time. Last few galactic governments,
Yeah.
tried to all wipe us out. So we don't trust anybody, which, is kind of in a sense,
Yeah.
why they might want to go it alone, self-sufficient autarky to some extent. Um,
I mean,
not that there's
especially here's the thing, especially the children of the Watch, right?
well, they're not a planet government, but just some extent.
No, but they're an identity, and they're a very strong identity, and they have this they hunker down and have
Hmm.
this very strict code.
Hmm.
I mean, this is another thing is the relationship with the past and with tradition, and that's something the Mandalorian, the show really brings up a lot.
Hmm.
Is what's our relationship with you know going back to these traditions and holding to them so strictly as a way of resisting kind of centralizing forces.
Hmm.
It's a really and then you have Bo-Katan saying, "Oh shoot, he's one of them," because she's been able to chart a more nuanced path.
Right. I have like two more big points, and then I think
Mhm.
we'll wrap it up.
Yeah,
I want to go over some characters. We brought up some characters, but let's just
yeah,
go over some characters and how they identify with themselves.
mhm,
Because, like, obviously, we're talking about these big thematic ideas, but like all good stories, you see these ideas through your
mhm.
characters,
Yeah,
through your individual protagonist or antagonist,
mhm,
and how do certain characters identify themselves.
mhm.
Again, I said it before, I think by the end of the original trilogy, Luke Skywalker, I'm a Jedi, like
Yeah,
my father before me. I think even Anakin by that point very much would say he's a Jedi by the end. I don't think he's
mhm.
saying I'm a Tatooinean and proud of it.
No.
He hates Tatooine. It's got sand,
I
it's
know.
coarse and gets everywhere.
Yeah,
um Leia's interesting because she's
yeah,
adopted, but I think she sees herself both as an Alderaanian and an Organa
mm,
before, and even maybe as a Solo before she even sees herself maybe even as a Skywalker, part of a family identity. We
right.
didn't get into that much. Um,
Well, so that one's interesting, and that one, Charles Soule really gets into
mm,
at the end of the ongoing run of
mm,
the comics because
ah,
she actually has to remember that she's Alderaanian. We have to remember she's Alderaanian. She sees herself as a rebel, as part of the Alliance to Restore the Republic.
that's true. Yeah.
As the main as from it at this time, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's why she goes off and forms a resistance, right? She
Hmm.
sees herself as someone who's constantly fighting for
She's a rebel
justice.
scum, and she's proud of it.
Yeah, and that that it exhausts her and
Hmm.
terrifies her, and Luke has to say, "Hey, remember, you're also a princess of Alderaan. Go take care of your own family for once."
Hmm.
Um, in the kind of the remnant fleet there that's floating around, and so brilliantly brings it. Charles brilliantly brings back the story from uh, that short run in 2015. Uh, and so yeah, that one we actually see, and that is an interesting one. We forget that she's Alderaanian because she's just so committed to the rebel cause and the resistance cause. I want to see more of her in the New Republic. See how that presses things.
I feel
Maybe,
like Leia is someone who identifies with her work. That's, I think, is
yeah,
ultimately her
that's kind of
identity.
what I'm getting at here. We've been seeing the Aftermath trilogy how
She's a
how
work
focused she
identity.
is. It is part of why her marriage breaks down with Han breaks down. You know, in
I mean,
part
remember they still married for 30 years, so it's not
they
like
are
they break. It's
but
really until Kylo Ren turns dark where it finally just
true.
cracks.
I think I'd be curious to see if this time of peace, the early part of the New Republic, uh, is an opportunity for her to find more nuance, to find more to say, oh yeah, I'm also Alderaanian. I'm also
Bloodline goes into that, I
yeah,
think.
Bloodline that really does. I mean, that talks about how this statue of Bail Organa, like this is truly her father.
Hmm.
Um, and so, and I mean, Claudia Gray, Leia Princess of Alderaan, that I mean, she's younger then, so kind of more clearly, but then she's thrust into this wider world.
A few moments in
Yeah,
Kenobi with Baylor and little Leia.
yeah.
Great. Wow.
And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, Bloodline's interesting for identities generally. I mean, the whole with the populists and the centrists. Oddly enough, she's a leader of the populists,
Hmm.
which you think then she'd be the senator from New Alderaan. But yeah, anyway.
Han's an interesting one too.
Yeah,
Because I feel like he's sort of someone who kind of tries to fake an identity with the whole "I'm a hard smuggler," and
yeah,
and then I don't think he had like an identity like I'm a proud Corellian or I'm a proud. I maybe he definitely identified with the rebel, but I feel like in a lot his identity primarily is his found family of Luke, Han, Leia, and
yeah,
Chewie, and then eventually his actual blood family and Ben
yeah,
Solo and Ray to some. Oh, no, not blood family, but like
yeah.
he identifies very much with his family. I think
Mhm.
in an odd sense, like Han's really a family man in a strange way, where I feel like
Yeah,
that's his primary identity is this close net of people that I have who finally you know care for me and like make me feel good inside. Um,
yeah. I mean, that's something we haven't gotten into is found family.
oh yeah, that's
We will
true.
at the end
Like
there, but
Ezra, when in the
yeah,
Rebel crew, that's a found family.
yeah,
Although Ezra very much, I think, does identify with Lothal. He's very Lothal centric in Rebels.
hmm
Where it's like he even kind of is kind of willing to leave the main Rebel alliance to go
yeah,
help Lothal. Hera and Sabine. Hera is very much of the alliance in the
yes,
Republic. Sabine kind of doesn't identify as a Mandalorian and does in the weird. She
hmm
does because she also wears the armor and
yeah,
she's her own Mandalorian. I think she created her own Mandalorian identity.
hmm
Mandalorian, maybe Jedi identity too. Um,
maybe. I mean, I think what's interesting with all those examples is uh, conflicted family histories, right?
mhm,
Reactions to parents, because
mhm.
Cham, he is Ryloth, he is Twi'lek.
He's all about
Um,
that Twilight independence. Oh, there we go. That's the
yeah,
plan I was thinking of.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
Ryloth. Like they don't want any galactic governments. Like Ryloth
yeah.
for the Rylothians.
Whereas Hera, in kind of her looked at, you're being short sighted here,
True.
goes off and joins the Rebel Alliance, right? In part, the uh, kind of the way those personal tensions affect these things.
Hmm.
I think Leia, I mean, her planet's destroyed, so there's that. Han is interesting.
Hmm.
We see in Solo how he's kind of rejecting, and feels like he's rejected by Corellia. My sense with Corellia is has this vibe of this hotshot pilot, independent vibe itself.
Well, Corellia was the Texas of Star Wars
Yeah,
galaxy. They're very much Corellia doesn't. We do our own thing, even though we're part of
and
the Republic.
yeah, and the kind of the shipbuilding and all that, just knowing ships, knowing how he gets this, like his father is one of the folks who builds the YT, whatever the Falcon model and all that.
Hmm.
So there is, even despite himself. That's the thing with Han is he has these ties, like you're getting it, despite his attempt to
Hmm.
push away from them. He just has them anyway. Yeah, like to found family, he can't help but come back and save Luke.
Right.
Yeah, circumstances, the escape from Hoth presses him to continue with the alliance, but I think that he there's a reason he delays, the reason he takes so long to get going. Um, you know,
Yeah. And now I guess, talking about a Solo, let's talk about the Ben Solo, Mr.
yeah,
Struggles with Identity every other episode.
yeah, yeah,
He's very much kind of struggled with his own identity. I think that's kind of his whole shtick is he
yeah,
doesn't have one. I think he kind of is looking for one because everyone's kind of like, "Oh, you're gonna be like your uncle, this great Jedi. You're gonna be you're the kind of the Prince of Alderaan. You're the hotshot pilot. Your grandpa is either the greatest Jedi hero ever or the monster who
mhm,
terrorized the galaxy for 30 years. You know,
mhm,
even Snoke is like, you have too much of your father's heart in you, and
yeah,
like a new Vader. It's like,
mhm,
and I think Kylo's whole journey throughout the sequels, and hopefully we'll see that expanded upon in the comic, is to
mhm,
find his identity and kind of who does he want to be. And I think at least if I read the novelization to Rise of Skywalker correctly, which you should,
mhm,
I think he realizes, I am all those things and more. And I want to take the best elements of
mhm,
the Solo, Organa, Skywalker legacy and kind of mush them together as my own. Because there's this great moment when he kind of does the Han, the the hey. He's
yeah.
like, he feels good. It's like, oh yeah, like this is the best parts of my mom, the best parts of my dad.
With a lightsaber.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
and he feels so freeing at that point. Like no
mhm,
longer kind of angry about it. So yeah,
mhm,
I mean, there's I did like I even weirdly again, even though as supreme leader of the First Order, I
mhm,
don't think he's calling himself a First Orderin. I hate these names
yeah,
I'm coming up with, but I don't think he really even yeah I like in some of the early materials like Kylo Ren was sort of detached from the First Order's main
mhm,
command, so it's like even then he's like one step to move from the First Order, even though he's Snoke's
yeah.
apprentice. So they're the guy struggling with identity. I'll let you speak on so.
Well, and that's yeah, and just like I mean the color and the Hux
Mhm.
tension is a mirror of the Vader Tarkin
Yeah.
in a way, just a lot more petulant for
Mhm.
both of them. Right, because Hux is, you know, part
He's
of
a he's a
is
legacy
his
of the Empire in the First Order.
yeah. I mean that's it. Like his father's legacy. Of course, he has part of murdering his father, but um, yeah, he's definitely part of this resurgent empire that is the First Order.
Mhm.
Whereas, yeah, that's the tension of you know King Kylo Ren. He's commanding him after he's killed Snoke. He's commanding Hux, and he's like, "Who gave you purview?" And then, of course, the Force choking. It's like, okay, okay, but even then, he's the when he's trying to bombard Luke out of the sky.
Mhm.
Kylo Ren is like, he's Hux to Kylo Ren. So that's enough,
Yeah.
you know.
Stop
So he
all.
doesn't fully take
Mhm.
Kylo Ren seriously ever. In part because like he just needs Ren to lose. I think in part because Hux is so committed to the order of the First Order um, that he sees Kylo Ren as a threat. Because yeah, Kylo Ren, you're right. I mean, I think Kylo Ren, Snoke and Kylo Ren, they aren't Sith, but they're Sith adjacent. They're so heavily inspired.
Mhm.
They still have
Well,
the
Snoke was created by the Sith, so
yeah, yeah, that's true by Palpatine. So
Mhm.
there's that, but trying to be the successors to the Sith, and so I mean, there's still the dark side. That's the thing. The dark side is
Right.
all about being
Mhm.
loyal to yourself at
Mhm.
the expense of everyone else.
Right.
Maybe that's the way of putting it. Is the ideal is to be loyal to yourself and to everyone else together. Whereas with the dark side, it's to be loyal to yourself by definition at the expense of everyone else. And you do become about existing at the expense of everyone else.
Right.
And so,
Agreed.
and that's
Ah,
again why Ben ultimately is able to find himself in taking on all these identities together. Yeah, it's this
mhm.
beautiful moment. I wish he'd lived, wish he'd survived to see that.
Yeah.
That's all they're
I
great.
mean, obviously Rey identifies herself
Yep.
at the end of the Skywalker, Rey
Yeah.
Skywalker, and a Jedi. She's all the Jedi. She's a Skywalker.
Hmm.
She doesn't see herself as a Jakkuan. Um,
Right.
that's something that was always imposed on her, and it's like or she's not Palpatine again. Something that was someone tried to impose on her.
Right.
That was just Palpatine. People always say that in some ways the Palpatine thing kind of takes away from Rey Nobody to a certain extent. I always see it as
Mm.
I always see the way I've always seen it is 7,
Mhm.
8, 9 is basically bad guys trying to impose an identity on Rey to get what they want from her. And at the end, she's like, "Nah, I'm done.
Yeah.
I am a Skywalker. That's the identity I choose myself. That I have built through this journey." And that's why at the end she says it.
Yeah.
Because like even at the end of the day, Palpatine drops the whole, "Ooh, you're my granddaughter" thing. She just, when he's doing the final zappy zaps at her, she's like,
Mhm.
a scavenger girl is no match for the power of me. She's not even. That's what he sees her as, just a nothing
Yeah.
scavenger girl. And then obviously Rey's like, "I am all the Jedi," and bam. So there's that.
Yeah.
A couple other characters.
Well, I want to
Oh, yeah.
camp out on with Ray for a little bit, just
Okay.
because. I mean, we only have 10 minutes off, but
Okay.
she has a really compelling journey about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
We first see her, she has to stay put. She
Right.
can't leave, or she'll miss her parents coming back,
Mm-hmm.
and that is all she knows. She's she's there on the planet. She has taught herself
Mm-hmm.
to learn how to fly, right? She's in the simulators. She does dream of a world beyond where all those star destroyers and all those ships crashed from.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she knows the story of the battle. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe she's read the Alex Zugor comic or not. I don't know. Or the Chuck Wendig novel or not. But
She probably has.
she has, dreaming of this like Luke, except that she's so bound to the place, and to again her parents coming back. And I mean, again, Ryan Johnson really shows this so beautifully with that cave, right? She's so desperate to see where she comes from, for her identity to go from where she comes from
Mhm.
with her parents. That's such this devastating letdown, but then also a new opportunity, a new way forward, when all we see is we see the shadow of Kylo Ren, I think, but then also just herself. And that's the interesting thing, is she's loyal to this other identity at the expense of herself. And that's I mean, if I get into this, just the gender question, that's a very feminine story, I think, that
Mhm.
women are often told to be loyal to your community at the expense of yourself, which is just as bad as being loyal to yourself at the expense of others, right?
Oh, I mean,
So
there's sometimes you give too much of yourself to others, and I think you
yeah,
can destroy yourself in the process.
absolutely. And so her journey is then to step out and to find this family in the resistance.
Mhm.
At the end of Last Jedi, she's sitting there with the two broken pieces of the lightsaber, the Skywalker lightsaber, sitting next to Leia, and she has the books, the Legacy of the Jedi, right there. She's begun to rebuild and move forward, and finally say, yeah, yes, she has the legacy of Palpatine, sure, but yeah, that's something she actively chooses against. Ray from Nobody is something she actively chooses against.
Mhm.
To say, no, I found this legacy in this other family who, like going back to what we're talking with Qui-Gon, you
Mhm.
know, is whose destiny is continually to bring the Force back to balance and bring the galaxy back to balance. And so, again, so many times we bring this up. What is this Ray film going to do? Where is she at 10 years from now? 10 years from that? Um, how it might not answer all our questions, might not go into it too much. It might be a bit of fun adventure, but there are some really important questions about how is she picking up what the sequel trilogy just started for her.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that good all that.
Again,
Just
Ryan
a couple more.
Johnson told a great story, the great Star Wars. Anyway, yeah, but also
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams. It's credit to J.J. for ending that way.
Yeah, good point about like rejecting the Ray Nobody thing because I always think
Mm,
I think there's always people who think Ray Nobody was the answer, and I always say, no, that was something Kylo imposed on her. You're nothing.
sure.
That was when a bad guy tells you that, you're not supposed to agree with them.
Right.
Uh,
It was
that's some
gaslighting.
yeah, and then Palpatine gaslights even more by saying, no, you are my blood,
Yeah.
which maybe technically is true, but I don't really care.
I
That
will
just means
say, sorry, go ahead. No, you're good.
that just means I get to possess you easier.
Yeah,
Um,
there you go. I will say the Ray from Nobody, it is a more compelling story for her to transcend that than the Ray Palpatine. Just because I think we've kind of seen that already. We hadn't seen, again, I think the more feminine, your nobody becomes somebody. Um, whereas, yeah, with the Ray Palpatine, it was your dark become light. We saw that with Anakin.
right,
But I mean, it's still that's the Rise of Skywalker doesn't take that away. That's still incredibly formative. The Ray from Nobody
right,
identity that she transcends, firstly in the Last Jedi, and then in Rise of Skywalker. Um,
right.
yeah, it's there in the story.
W One more character. I think we'll just do one more character, and then I'll have one
Mm,
more final point.
mhm.
Thrawn's an interesting one.
Yep.
Especially depending on what you read, because his, in the books, he, and I feel like you can argue that maybe they're trying to get to a point where Thrawn kind of loses the plot, but I don't think they've done a good
Yeah.
enough job yet. But at least on the book side, where Thrawn's all about, I'm with the Chiss. My identity is to the Chiss, to the House of Merudu, and then by the
Yeah.
end, he's
Myth.
saying
House of Myth.
House of Myth. And then by Ahsoka, he is lost plot, and he's just going, "Long live the Empire." He's sort of forgotten that he's a Chiss first, and now he is consumed by the Empire identity as Grand Admiral and heir to the Empire. Dun dun
Yeah.
dun. So there, that's all I wanted to bring up with Thrawn.
Yeah. Again, it's tricky because the Thrawn of screen and the Thrawn of paper. The Thrawn of paper Thrawn is actually probably more nuanced. Just because you have more time, it's paper, you have more time. Whereas he's also, is he a protagonist? Is he the computer that Thalius and Arlani consult, or is whatnot? But also we see his motivations to actually defend the house and the ascendancy. Yeah. Whereas again, in on screen, he's just the villain for the rebels and for Ahsoka, and whatnot.
Very
So
loyal to the Empire.
yeah, at this point, Lord of the Empire, and I mean that I think that's might be truer to, from what I sense, true. Get idea the sense of truer to the original Zahn novels from the '90s,
Right.
truer to his own power base, which is odd because he still rules through respect, and through competence. But at the end of the day, yeah. I mean, that's the interesting. The one thing that really I think is most consonant, maybe with is this the character of Thrawn, canon Thrawn with Legends Thrawn. Again, I should reread those books and reread the comic at least. Um, is that he overestimates things he can't understand, that can't be empirically known. So, like the Bendu, and like the way Ruch assassinates him in Legends, right? It's
Right.
that's a similar kind of thing, like the Purgle. So,
Space
um,
whales. Yep.
is he? Yeah, yeah. That's the thing with Thrawn. Is we don't. I mean, that's the weird thing about the novels, right?
Mhm.
Is it complicates this picture that is a lot more clear cut on screen. That he is allied to. I mean, just not even necessarily his power, but being right. you know, being the one who has it figured, being the one who has it all figured out, because he actually does. I mean,
Until he
maybe that is
doesn't.
also the no,
Unt-
until he does, until there's something that he can't anticipate because he's overlooked, because he just doesn't understand the Force, or yeah, both the Purgle and the Bendu. Um, Yeah. So maybe Ahsoka season 2 will go into that more, but
Or the Filoni film
yeah, the
too,
Filoni film, yeah,
and the Filoni film,
yeah,
probably more of it. And
the
yeah,
Mandoverse stuff, yeah.
yeah. Um. Okay.
Mhm.
No, I said one more, but I'll do it. This is the last one. I promise.
Okay,
Last characters we'll go into
yeah,
because I think okay, kind of get it all back. The
yeah,
clones,
yeah,
because that's a story of identity, and I'll add Boba in there too, because like
yeah, true.
their whole thing is about identity, where it's like they are the clones of this guy they may barely know and
Mhm,
never met, except for Boba, obviously. And then they're off to fight in a war for a republic they aren't technically even citizens in,
mhm,
and yet they've been bred with loyalty for this republic, and then they get mind controlled to be loyal to this empire, and then some of them break off and
mhm,
their
mhm,
loyalty is to their brothers.
yeah,
And I think that's always, and I think clones weirdly the best ones always identify first with their, even the ones that turned bad in the remember some of those early clone episodes where you had clone traders, like they were always like, I took a
mhm,
blow for all us clones. Like the clones are oddly loyal to each other even when they're betraying each other
yeah,
in a sense. So I just think that's an interesting in terms of an identity as well, where it's like the clones have become their own identity outside of just Django
mhm,
clones. And then, of course,
yeah,
Boba becomes his own character and person with his own identity and thoughts and feels.
yeah. Again, like I was saying off the top, with
Mhm,
D. Bradley Baker,
mhm,
and his performance, yeah. Again, it's this brilliant foil in contrast to these literally factory made droids, um, that this great tragedy
mhm,
that they're yeah, that Rex in just before Order 66. He's incredibly somber and solemn, that they wouldn't this war, they know this war something is amiss, and
mhm.
yet they wouldn't exist without it. So what do you do with that?
I
You do
know.
the best you can in the moment. That's you know Rex, Gregor, and Wolf at the end. I think Cody definitely all the Bad Batch. Uh, they're able to find their way through in the moment. And yeah, like you said, loyalty to each other. They're able to. I mean, that's the thing. This heroic stories that were given, loyalty to the common good,
Mhm,
and therefore, and that's the interesting thing is, yeah, they're bred with loyalty to the Republic and to the Empire. Even the Bad Batch, to some extent, uh, is bred with that, and yet when the Empire goes against that, um, at least a handful of them are able to say, no, we're the identity that has developed over this war. Ironically enough,
mhm,
one of the one of the star systems that squeeze through their fingers of the Empire are the clones, and it's why they're a threat and why Palpatine wants to eliminate them. Because he sees, oh yeah, no, they're actually these incredibly capable soldiers
mhm.
who are now taking part in the Rebel Alliance. That's what curious. Omega is also a clone. Um, you know,
Of course, well,
all so
brothers.
yeah. So it's. I mean, it's a story of an identity that is oriented towards identity of, again, the ideal of the experience of the personal
Mhm,
that contributes to the common. It's identity that, yeah, endures in spite of this monolithic. I mean, this is an interesting image here, right? Endures in spite of this monolithic entity coming at them, namely the droid army.
mhm.
Endures in spite of this monolithic entity coming at them, namely the Empire. They find a way through,
Yep, agreed.
by their loyalty to each other and to their and to the Jedi too, right? So
We are brothers. All right.
yeah,
I think that's it. I could have thought of more identities and
sure.
more things. I feel like we just scratched the surface in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
But put your comments in the comment sections. Tell us what you thought of this episode and more. This was a good one. I'm happy with this.
Yeah, definitely great conversation. As you always seem to put things together, put notes together, and have a good conversation, great prompts for reflection, discussion. So yeah, thanks for putting that together. This is a good place to wrap things up. And folks who've been joining us on the live stream, folks listening afterwards on Spotify and Apple, thanks for chiming in, joining. Let us know what you thought of our conversation tonight. What do you think of what else did we talk about? What do you think of Skeleton Crew? What do you think of Clones and D. Bradley Baker? And if you're able to read Mask of Fear, give us some non-spoilery thoughts. And then let us know, of course, what Clone Identity and and of course the Balin Skull recasting. There's big news there, and of course Clone Identity and just Galactic Identity, political identity, and diversity and unity, and that these deep themes that Star Wars does keep on referring to and bringing up. So please do let us know. Write an essay if you want. All good. We'll read it or not. So Tyler, thanks for chiming in as well. Looking forward to Tractor Beam coming up. First off, plugs, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Ion Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. Blue Sky, Ion Ken at Ion Cannon. Joel, again, thanks for a great conversation. Where can they find you on the internet?
Of course, find me at Blue Sky at JID20234. Again, JID20234. I don't spend that much time on Twitter, honestly. I'm mostly on Discord these days. If you want to find me, so go to the Star Wars Underworld Discord. We're having a movie night, Treasure Planet, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, Friday.
Nice. You can follow me. I'm still on the Meta apps, Instagram, Threads, MNEUG1138. Also, beaches.foodie, Instagram beaches.foodie. Twitter is still on the Bird app, NEG45, Blue Sky, MEG1138. Vanessa, Marshall, and I are the only folks I know of who have 1138 in our handle. Just the old nerdy thing. Check that out. And again, check out Tractor Beam this Wednesday, talking about Jack Battle of Jakku Last Stand number 3, and Insider Short Story, The Fate of Ariadu. To join us 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Underworld YouTube channel, on Iron Cannon and Underworld Twitch as well. Next week we are talking about question: should Star Wars stories be accessible? And we're gonna break down the meaning of the term accessible. I bet Andor is going to come up as a question there as well. So please do join us right here on the Underworld YouTube channel and Twitch and Iron Cannon Twitch, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific next Monday night. Joel, it's been fun. Let's blow this thing and head home.